continuing in our series, Lead. And whenever we're talking about every one of us, last week we started talking about how every one of us is called to lead. And leadership is not position, is it? Do you remember what it is? What is leadership? It's influence. It is influence. It's about impacting people. You may never have a title, but if you impact people, you are a leader. And how every single one of us has been called by God to lead. So I'm gonna hit a lot of stuff today. There are notes in your app. I encourage you to go back afterwards, start taking some notes today maybe, because I'm gonna hit a lot of ground. Are you guys ready? Okay, here we go. So first of all, in this room, I'm probably talking to 4 different categories of people. The first category is those of you who are leading well. You're a healthy leader and you just want to go to some greater levels in leadership. You're already leading. That's one of them. The next one is those that want leadership but aren't a leader yet. They just want, so I don't even care what position it is. I don't care what kind of leadership. I just want leadership. The other one is the fact that they want to be obedient to God, but they have no idea how in the world they could ever have influence. They have no idea how they could ever lead. And then the other one is, no, I'm going to hide in a corner. Don't you dare make me lead. I want nothing of it. I'm happy living my comfortable little life, okay? So those are probably 4 categories that every one of us probably fit into. But whether you don't want to lead or you are a healthy leader or the other in between, I think it's really, really important that we start understanding the foundations of leadership to make sure we stay in a good place. For one, what we're going to talk about today, if you don't understand this concept, if you are a healthy leader, it is too easy in a good leadership position to turn into pride if we don't understand some of these things and start thinking that we're doing it. On the other side of it, if you are not wanting to lead, it's because you haven't had a revelation yet of what God has for you in a place of influence and in a place of leadership. So can we all be open to just realize we're all going to learn something today, right? Okay. So how could I be a leader? You know, there's a story of a man named Moses in the Bible, and there's movies made about him, all those kinds of things. But it's amazing what Moses did. See, Moses was the one who led the children of Israel out of captivity. They'd been in captivity in Egypt for 400 years, slaves. He led them out, led them into the desert to the promised land. They messed up, but he led them through the desert for 40 years. Have any of you ever heard the story of the parting of the Red Sea? Okay, where the millions of people walked across dry land? That was Moses leading them. Any of you ever hear about the 10 Commandments? Okay. It was Moses who met with God on a mountaintop and were given the 10 Commandments where God wrote those on tablets of stone. So would you say this guy might be a little bit qualified as a leader? Okay? Taking millions of people out of captivity and leading them for 40 years. Okay? This is a guy who maybe had a thing or two to say about leadership, right? So sometimes we look at the greatness, but we don't always look at how it started. Now, I want to look at how it started because he actually was raised in the palace and killed somebody accidentally, ran away from the palace. He was hiding out in the desert. He was in the desert for 40 years hiding. Okay, feeling shame, doing nothing, thinking he'd completely lost his purpose, right? Sometimes maybe some of you have felt that way, like you've totally messed up so bad, there is no purpose for you. So this is the place we find Moses when we start in Exodus 3. And this is 40 years in his wilderness experience, okay? It says, Exodus 3, verse 11 and 12. But Moses, okay, so I got to back up. God appears to Moses, okay? He's hiding in the desert. He appears to him and says, Moses, I want you to take the people out of slavery that have been slaves for 400 years. We talked about that last week. But here it is. It says, but Moses protested to God. He says, who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? God answered, I will be with you. Okay, so I want to address this for a second, because how many of you have ever said, like, who am I to do that? God, like, what are you thinking? I don't know about you, but I have asked myself this question so many times. You know, Ralph and I talk about our story of being called to start this church, and we're like looking over our shoulders like, God, you must be talking to the guy behind me, because what are you thinking, right? You know, maybe none of you guys have ever had that thought, but I sure have. Because I'm thinking, like, how can I do this? God, I'm not qualified. I can't do these things, right? But the interesting thing in this is that God's answer to him wasn't, oh, Moses, you've got more in you than you think you do. Oh, Moses, don't worry, I believe in you. Moses, man, you're the man. You can do this. That's not how he responded, was it? Because how many times when somebody is insecure, when they're having a hard time dealing with it, do we try to build up that person and their character or what they are able to do? We often do that, don't we? Someone comes and says, oh, I don't know if I can do that job. And we're like, no, you've got it in you. Man, you can do this. You're awesome. You'll be great, right? That's what we do. But that's not what God did. What did he do? Put that verse up again. God answered simply, I will be with you. You see, it wasn't about Moses and his ability. It was about God and his ability. So how many of us just have to realize, man, leading is not even about us and what we're capable of. It's not even about that. It is about what is God capable of. So let's keep going here. Exodus 4, verse 1. Okay, so they go through this whole argument. And then this is a little bit later in the next chapter. It says, but Moses protested again. Okay, after God's trying to tell him, look, it's not about you, it's about me, yada, yada, everything else. He says, but Moses protested again. What if they won't believe me or listen to me? What if they say the Lord never appeared to you? Okay, so here there's two things. One, Moses really does not want the job. He does not want the job, okay? I'm happy being out here in the wilderness. I am happy just doing my own thing. I do not want to do this, God. Okay, are we getting that picture? Right? Okay. But here's the other thing is, he didn't want the job, but here it says, what if they won't believe me? Everything was about, what do they think? What if they don't believe me? What if other people won't affirm the calling you've just put on my life? Anyone ever been there? What if they don't see what you're trying to tell me? Here he's trying to walk out of God's very destiny for his life in case someone else doesn't affirm what God is saying. How many of us, though, well, I can't do that because what if they don't think, like, what is so-and-so going to think? Or, you know, God gives you a dream and a vision, and the first person you talk to is like, that's ridiculous. You? Right? Maybe it's not happened to you guys. It's happened to me, okay? I'm just going to talk about myself today. But, you know, here he tried to walk away because he was scared of what other people think. Well, let me tell you, if you want to lead well, you're going to have to get over it. Because it gets to a point where if you don't surrender to what God and God alone thinks of you, you will never fulfill the call of God on your life. Because it's not about what other people think of you. It is about what is God calling me to do. Being a woman in ministry, man living, I did not want this. I did not ever think of myself as a pastor. I didn't even want to speak in front of people. But I knew God called me. And I had to take a lot of hits and a lot of people telling me I should be off the platform. A woman should never be up there, yada, 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 whatever, blah, 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 blah. But when you know who you are and what God says about you, it's irrelevant what anyone else says. It's irrelevant because it's not about what they think. It is about what he said. And he says there is purpose on each and every one of you. He says there is a divine calling on each one of you. He says that there's things in you that need to influence and impact the people in your community around you. It's about what he said, not about what everyone else says, okay? So Moses has to get past this. But I want you to know, God does not call the equipped, he equips the called, right? He doesn't call you into something because you already know how to do it. What he's going to do is he's going to show his glory in your life by doing something through you that you were not able to do. That's when God gets the glory. The fact that Ralph and I do what we do is for his glory because we don't know how to do this. But him in us can do it. See, there's things in you that you don't have the ability to, but if you have the calling, God will equip you and you'll do great things. See, we've got to realize this is about the calling, not the ability. About the calling, not the ability. Anyhow, so we keep going. A few verses later. You'd think by now Moses is starting to get it, but no. In verse 10 to 15, I know how to be stubborn with God too. I don't know about you guys, I know. But it says Moses pleaded with the Lord. So now it's not just protesting, it's like, please, God. Can you just picture this? Moses is there like, please, please, God, don't do this to me. Okay? He's pleading with the Lord. Oh, Lord, I'm not very good with words. I never have been, and I'm not now, even though you have spoken to me. I get tongue-tied, and my words get tangled. Then the Lord asked Moses, who makes a person's mouth? I had a really good argument to say no to God. I had a really good excuse. And then he throws that at me? Like, really? Who decides whether people speak or do not speak, hear or do not hear, see or do not see? Is it not I, the Lord? Once again, he's not talking to his doubts and his inabilities. He's talking once again to God's ability to do whatever he wants in your life. You see? Now go. I will be with you as you speak, and I will instruct you what to say. Man, we can be really good at excuses sometimes, can't we? Oh, man, God, I can't really do that. This is a really bad time, God. Right? Like, I can't go love on those people because, like, I want to go to a movie tonight, or I'm tired, or I have kids' soccer 7, 8 nights a week. You know, we come up with all of these excuses, or, you know, I'm not, people won't listen to me, or I just don't have the right ability, or, you know, this is the wrong season of life for me, or whatever else it is. Man, guys, we're going to miss out on what God has for us because of all these excuses. And God's saying, look, it's not about you. I don't care if you don't know how to do what I'm asking you to do. I don't care if you don't know how to write a book and I've asked you to write a book. I don't care what you don't know how to do. What I do care about is what I want to do. You see, it's not about what we know. It's not about what we can do. It's about what he can do. But man, we got to be willing. We got to be willing to start saying, okay, God. But see, God, here Moses is protesting. I want us to go into the last part of this. Okay, so he said, look, I've got it. I can do all these things. I can take care of it. You may not speak well, but I can speak well through you, all this. But Moses again pleaded. This guy's just not getting the message here, okay? Lord, please send anyone else. Anyone. Okay? I'm not even picky. I don't care if you put like the lowest guy who doesn't know a thing and can't see his right hand from his left hand ahead of me. I don't care. Just use anyone else, okay? Then the Lord became angry with Moses. Not a good place to be. All right, he said, what about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he speaks well. And look, he is on his way to meet you now. He will be delighted to see you. Talk to him and put the words in his mouth. I will be with both of you as you speak, and I will instruct you both in what to do. Okay, here's what I see is happening. One, God's plan was to speak through Moses, and God made that clear. He said, who is it that speaks? Who is it that causes people to speak? It is I. But because of Moses' fear, God had to go to plan B and speak through his brother Aaron. I fully believe 100% that if Moses would have stepped out and said, okay, God, you'll speak through me, fine, that stuttering problem and that speech problem would have been healed. I believe it 100%. But in his fear, a backup plan came in. Praise God, God has backup plans for us, right? But I don't know about you. I want plan A, not plan B. Right? Because he is able to do things in you and through you that you could have never even imagined if we're simply willing. If we're simply willing to say, okay, God, I don't have the ability. Man, I can't speak in front of people, and you're telling me to go share in a Bible study. Are you kidding me, God? Man, that thing that happened in my life that you gave me victory over, you want me to write a book about it? Are you serious? But you know what? It's not about what we can or can't do, once again. It's once again about him and his ability in us. Right? Say in us and through us. So here's my question. Every one of us right now is faced with the question of, will we rise up? Will we push past the fears? Look, Moses had some serious fears here going on, right? He had, like, the Pharaoh, he grew up in the palace, and now he's got to go back there to face them. This is facing your past. This is facing your failure. This is facing your inability. For 40 years, he beat himself up hiding, and he's got to face all of that to do what God's called him to do. But my goodness, what happened when he did? What happened is he took millions of people out of slavery, out of Egypt, into what God had for them, into a great plan of freedom, right? So what could God be asking you to step up to? Right? That is something we've got to seriously start looking at. God, what is it that maybe it's loving on your neighborhood. Maybe it's starting a Bible study in your workplace. Maybe it's just starting to take meals to people you know are sick so you have a moment to just love on them. Maybe it is starting a new ministry. Maybe it's feeding the homeless. You see people homeless and you just decide you're going to start cooking meals and start giving it to them. What is it? I don't know what it is. But what is God starting to speak to you about? Because leadership is action. It's not just a concept. You know, it's great. And unfortunately, I know a lot of people, they do a lot of leadership training. They do a lot of leadership knowledge. They've got a lot of knowledge, but they're not really doing anything in their life, right? They've got titles or positions, but there's no impact. There's no influence around them. There's nothing really happening in their life. And so leadership is action. I think we have this up on the screen, but there's a great quote by John Quincy Adams. It said, I know it's in your app, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. Okay, I'm going to read it again. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. Isn't that amazing? It's about influence. If you can push people, as I said, here at our church, our whole thing is we just want to push people forward in their walk with God, right? If you can push the people around you one step closer to victory in their life, if you can step them one step closer to Jesus, you're a leader, right? But here's the thing, is leaders have to take risks. Leaders must take risks. They've got to do something that hasn't been done before, and this gets scary. When you haven't seen something done, but God is asking you to do it, that's risky. But that's what leaders do. Leaders take a risk while followers stay safe. You've got to be willing to break out of the box. Okay? Followers stay in a box of containment, of safety. Leaders are willing to break out of the box to see what's possible. You see, if you stay in the box of what you've known, stay in the box of your safety, you're never going to find out what God could have had for you, right? You never find out what God might have done through you if you'd have done that. You know, leadership does not mean there's no fear. Leadership means that the goal of what you want to accomplish is just greater than the fear. That's ultimately what it is the goal of where you're going outweighs the fear. Whether it's just simply to obey God, to have his best for you, whatever it is, it will outweigh the fear. You know, when last December, when God started putting on my heart to take She Conference to Kenya, man, that was a turning point for me. I never had wanted to do women's conferences in the first place, but 4 years ago, I felt like it was time to step up and do a conference, having no idea what God would do in it and through it. And I think to date, we've done 10 conferences now. But when he said to go to Kenya, it was like, oh, God, So inside there's that fear rising up of, how am I going to pay for this? Like, they can't pay for anything. I've got to fully fund this. How are we going to pay for it? How am I going to go to a country I've never been before and work with people I have never actually met? Okay, how many of you know there's a lot of online scams and all these things? And it's like, God, I have never met these people. I have no idea what I'm stepping into at all. But yet I knew he was calling us out to it. Little did we know when we arrived there in May. Like, God supernaturally took care of every single detail. We arrived in there, and man, the miracles started breaking out. And then, as we've shared with you before, we were supposed to just teach to 25 pastors at that last day. Ended up 200 pastors show up to be taught and mentored. And they've invited us back now. And so now we're going back in a couple weeks. And we're going to be speaking to hundreds and hundreds of pastors who are now opening up their country to us to help them guide and lead godly ways in every area. But you know what? It was a huge risk. It's easy now to kind of go, oh yeah, God's got that. But no, it's a risk that you've got to be willing to step out and go, God, I don't know how this is going to happen. When I said in June, hey, we're going to go back in November, I didn't know how that was going to happen. Now our costs are double because now we're having to rent tents and all of the facilities and the chairs and all of that to accommodate the crowds. Where is that going to come from? Exactly. Your brain can only figure so much out. That's when we have to start trusting God. And let me tell you, the faster you learn to trust him, the better it's going to be. Because what would have happened if I let my fear stop? Man, what if we'd let our fear of starting a church, of not knowing what we were doing, stop us from doing it? Right? There's always, as we said, our good friend Dr. Tim Story always says this, there's always somebody on the other side of your obedience. There's somebody waiting for you on the other side of your obedience. So we need to be willing to step up and be actual people of action and take the risk. A lot of times people think of leadership as very glamorous, as very, I can't wait, oh man, it would be so amazing to be that person. What you don't realize is that leadership requires sacrifice. Not every person likes that you succeed. Not every person likes the person in leadership. Right? As they say, when you go in leadership, it's like a mountain. When you're at the base, when you're a follower, you can have multitudes of friends. But as you go up that mountain of leadership, your circle of influence gets smaller and smaller for a couple of reasons. One, not everyone likes your success. Two, when you are climbing in your level of leadership success and in your levels of leadership, you start finding that you want to be keener and you want to be sharper with the people who you put around yourself. You don't want to be hanging around, if you're an eagle, you don't want to be hanging out with turkeys, right? You want to be around people who will inspire you, who will make you think bigger, who will make you think in a more challenging way. So your circles get smaller and smaller. There's sacrifices. There's things in your life that you may have to give up. Not that it's wrong, but for you it is, because God wants more from you. There's sacrifices that need to be made when we do it. And guess what? People won't always like you for it. But I like this. Rick Godwin had a great quote, and it said, if you succeed without sacrifice, it's because someone who went before you made the sacrifice. If you're going and going, oh, this is easy. Somebody laid down the spiritual groundwork or the work groundwork to make that thing happen. Someone who starts a company, let me tell you, they sacrifice a lot more than someone who comes in and just starts and takes over what's already there. But I want to tell you that it's worth going through the sacrifice to get there. Because if you don't, you will not see what God has for you. I wish it weren't true, but it is. That the level of leadership you attain is directly correlated to the level of pain you can endure. Now you're kind of going, oh good, sign me up. Yay! No, but you know what? There is something understandable. As we go through the processes, we're going to talk about this later in this series too. The process of preparation for leadership. There are things that hurt. There are things that stretch us, that have to grow us, that have to change us, to prepare us for what God has for us. But if we don't let that pain grow us, what we're going to do is we're going to get stumped in that victim mode. So when you're going through stuff, awesome, you're in a preparation season. Instead of looking at it, this horrible attack trying to take you out, how about you look at it at the fact of, hey, God, you know what? You're trying to equip me to a new level. Man, this is awesome. I'm going to learn from this so I can step into a greater level of leadership. And you know what? As you start doing it in His power, right? In His power and in His grace, all of a sudden these levels will get easier and easier and easier. And the pain that hurt you at level 1 no longer hurts you when you're at level 10. That thing that would have taken you out no longer threatens to take you out. Because God is working in you. He's helping you move from pain from level to level. But if you're not willing to lead, you will miss the prize. You know, someday we're going to all stand before God. And Jesus Christ is going to be right there. And we're going to have to answer to Him why we were not willing to pay the price to do what He called us to do. And with Jesus Christ, who sacrificed His life for us, sitting right there, who gave it all, we're going to have to explain how we wanted a comfortable life instead of a God-given destiny life. And I don't want that. He loves us all. There's great love, but there is so much purpose. There is so much He has for us, and you won't know it unless you step out and find it. I would have never known this would be our life, right? I had no idea that God would do in our lives what He's doing, but what it took is us saying yes and stepping into it. You know, there's someone who broke the comfort zone. I want to touch on this quickly. Hebrews 11, verse 8 to 10. This is Abraham, who the promise was given that we all can have today. But it was by faith that Abraham obeyed when God called him to leave home and go to another land that God would give him as an inheritance. He went without knowing where he was going. And even when he reached the land God promised him, he lived there by faith, for he was like a foreigner living in tents. And so did Isaac and Jacob, who inherited the same promise. Abraham was confidently looking forward to a city with eternal foundations, a city designed and built by God. Okay, here the interesting thing is you can glaze over it, but it says, God said go, and Abraham literally took his family and went. He didn't even know what direction he was going. He said, God, you said go? Sure, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. I don't know what this looks like. But then as he went, God gave him directions. You see, too many of us are sitting waiting for all the directions instead of going. When we start breaking out of that comfort zone and go, okay, God, I don't know what this looks like, but I'm going to start doing it. Okay, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to take a step further. Then guess what? God will meet you in that step. And then you take another step forward, and He'll meet you in that step. Because you see, if we don't ever step out, we won't ever see where God wants to take us, because God needs us to trust Him. And the greatest way to trust us, or for us to trust Him and Him to know it, is by doing something and stepping out when we don't know what's next. Right? I don't know about you, but I love to know all the details, okay? I love knowing all the details. Anyone else like that? Okay. When I plan a trip, man, I got to know everything. I got to know everything in those hotel rooms. I got to know exactly what's on my flight. I got to know everything. So when God says then no, just go. And you're like, can you throw a few details my way? And He's like, nope. But that's out of my comfort zone. I like the details, God, please. And He's like, nope. Because you know what? Me stepping out is growing my trust in God. Because as I step out, now I see God meet me. I'm like, oh, wow, you know, I don't have to rely on my own understanding. I can trust Him. All I have to do is just step out and obey. I can take a risk. I can get out of the comfort zone knowing He will take care of it. Amen? You know, the interesting thing for Abraham is he never saw the vision fulfilled that God gave him. He was only part of that journey. He started the journey that generations later would benefit from. But I think too many people walk away from their destiny 5 minutes into obeying God. Right? We step out, we take a risk, and it's like, okay, God, where is it? I want the big picture now. And we quit. But are we willing to look at the long term? You know, there's just another story I wanted to share that quickly I heard this week. And there was a piano player in California playing at in bars and nightclubs and stuff like that, and he was very good. And one night he was playing, and one of the wealthier patrons in the nightclub said, "Look, I want you to sing. I'm tired of hearing just that piano. Sing." He's like, "I don't sing. I've never sung in front of people before. I don't sing." He goes, "Sing." And he's like, "No, I don't sing." Well, the boss came along and says, "You want a paycheck? You sing." Well, he sang a song and sang it better than anyone had ever heard it sung before. And that was Nat King Cole, who then went on to sing Unforgettable and made all of these timeless classics. But he was forced out of his comfort zone, not by choice, but by force. And sometimes that's how we've got to, it's like we got to just get that push to get out of a comfort zone into something that is absolutely amazing, right? So today I'm pushing you, okay? Now, you don't all have to sing. That's okay. Pastor Katie's gifted at that, so we can leave that. But once again, you have to push out of the comfort zone to realize that maybe there's something more than what we saw. Maybe there's something more than what we understood. Maybe there's something more. You know, when Ralph told me we were moving to Florida, and I was like, okay, yes, we'll move to Florida, I did not want to come. I only could see, I didn't want to leave family. I didn't want to leave the comfort of where we were. I didn't want to leave the familiarity. Okay? But I was trusting God enough to say, okay, I'll go, but I don't want to. But God started quickly turning that in my heart, just in the willingness to go. Because, you know, see, all I was looking at was what I was going to lose instead of what God wanted to bring. You see, when we start shifting our vision to not what I have to give up, but what am I going to gain, all of a sudden now God can start taking you somewhere. You see, we need to have a vision of where we're going. The Bible says, for lack of, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. Or in one version it says, where there is no vision, the people perish. You see, without forward motion towards a vision, you'll get stuck in your past. You'll get stuck in the comfort zone. Okay, I don't want us stuck where we've been or what we're losing. I want us moving forward. So how can your vision drive you? I want to just share this in closing. Hebrews 12:2. It says, keep your eyes on Jesus, our leader and instructor. He was willing to die a shameful death on the cross because of the joy he knew would be his afterwards. So what does this mean? Jesus suffered everything on this cross. He took the shame, the pain. I mean, it was grueling. But he did it because he knew that there was a prize, and that was you and I being able to live eternally with him in heaven. He did it because it was worth it to show his love for you. That's why he did it. That vision allowed him to stay focused in the most grueling, horrifying things that could ever happen to somebody. There was a vision that he had. And we have to understand, if we want to push through the problems in life, if we want to push through the obstacles that try to tear you down, you've got to have a vision of where you're going. You've got to have a vision. You've got to start seeing, what does God have for me? The vision is the why you're going to do it. Maybe the only thing you've got right now, and I know for us this has happened many times in my life, the only why I had was because God asked me to. Because my heart is to serve him, and I want him to say, well done, good and faithful servant, when I see him. If that is your only why, then it's enough, right? But when God starts giving you a vision something, that vision will help you move past the obstacles. When you feel like quitting, you can go back to your why. You can go back to that vision of, no, you know what? People still need Jesus. Man, I want to quit. I want to leave this office. I don't want to work here anymore. But God gave me a heart for the people I work with. See, that why will move you forward. It'll keep you going. And when you discover your why, you'll tolerate any how. Okay? That's when the pain of leadership becomes irrelevant. When the pain of people not liking you because you tried to share Jesus with them, it doesn't matter because you know God has called you to influence people. Okay, when the rejection of trying to pray for someone who's sick and they're like, oh, I don't believe in that. That is irrelevant in relation to the fact that God told you to lay your hands on the sick and they'll recover. You see, when you have focus of that, it's not about what people say anymore about us. It's not about our ability. It's about the calling. The calling is so much more important than our ability. The calling is what will change this world. If every one of us would be willing to step into our calling and not be limited by our ability, what God could do in our area, what God could do in our nation, what God could do in our world. Can you imagine? You know, our friend Miles Monroe said, he says, one of the richest places in the world is the graveyard. And he says, because so many people die with untapped potential and untapped wealth. I don't want to be there. I want us to be a church that rises up into our influence, whatever that looks like. As I said, it's not about position, but it's about making sure we realize this is not about our ability. You know, one of the first things in this is the fact that living a life for Jesus Christ is not even in our ability. There's no way we can live the kind of life God has for us. You know, too many times people look at it and go, oh, well, you've got to get your life together. Get your life together and then come to church. Or once you do the 10 Commandments, then God will love you. No. See, the thing is, without Jesus Christ in our lives, we can't do any of that. You see, we can live the right life with God because he's in us. Because it's not our ability, it's his ability. That's what his grace is. His grace is not just the forgiveness of sins, but giving us the ability to not sin because we've understood that he is filling us and it's out of his overflow that we can live. You know, if you've never accepted Jesus, this is maybe a crazy concept for you to understand because it's like, well, don't I have to be a good person? Don't I have to do all these things? Well, the only thing you need to do, first and foremost, is to ask Jesus into your life. Because once he's in your life, now he is the one helping you. He's the one giving you the power to go, oh, no, you don't want to make that decision. No, come on, I've got a better way for you. No, here, I've got you the strength to overcome that. You know, he is the one who is overflowing. I want us just to close our eyes for a moment. Because if you're here and you've never asked Jesus into your life, I want to just give you an opportunity to say a simple prayer. We're all going to pray it. Whether you're here or online, we're all going to pray it, and we're going to let Jesus just come into our lives and start doing the work in us, because we can't do it ourselves. This is not just like God told Moses. He said, it's not about you, it's about me. God can turn your life around. He can turn your mess into a message. He can turn your past into a powerful testimony for him. But we've got to let him in. So I want you, if that's just you, if something's stirring inside you, you're like, I want Jesus. I've made a mess. I have not been relying on him. I want him. I want you just to repeat after me. Dear Jesus, come into my life today. Forgive me of my sin. Make me new. Help me to serve you. I give you my life. In Jesus' name, amen.